Hi everybody, a very good morning to every one of you. Greetings one and all. I have to say, it's not only a pleasure to find myself in front of the camera this morning, but also an honor and a privilege to be able to speak to you again. Thank you very much for granting me that. Yeah, very often as I prepare for these videos, I will come across the name of a lady, maybe somebody's wife or daughter or mother, a person in their own right, who is quite interesting. And I feel, oh, I must talk about this. I need to touch on this. But so often it appears that history is written for men. And so while I am talking about history, and I'm talking about men essentially, it's like it would be an interruption, a detour, if you like, a distraction, to now suddenly start talking about, one of the ladies. But in the next episode of the Jameson raid, I will be telling you about a Colonel John Dale Lace, a very interesting man. But we'll get round to that when the time comes. But his wife is an equally interesting lady, and I feel that I just can't, pass her by. The next episode is going to be a busy one, and I'm not going to have time to slip in anything about her there. So if it's okay with you, I've made a little video clip of her life and stuck it on the end of this episode. So I hope you will look at it, and I hope you'll enjoy it. But one of the interesting developments of the 19th century was the progress made in improvements of the bicycle, particularly the invention of the pneumatic tire. The arrival of the bicycle changed society. You didn't need to have a horse and all the attendant problems that went along with that in order to travel around. You could simply hop on your bike, as people did over the weekends and in their spare time, in groups or singularly, and just enjoy the freedom of the countryside and the ability to travel to distant towns and cities. So it became a craze, and folk would form cycling clubs where they could be together and socialize. They would meet to watch bicycle races. So, all in all, the bicycle was an amazing, wonderful development. And it was so here in South Africa too. The cycling fraternity was well served by a gentleman by the name of Arthur Shimwell. He had a business in the middle of Johannesburg, and he supplied bicycles. He was also a manufacturer of bicycles, and he did very well out of it. Yeah, he got a very nice order from the Transvaal government for 100 bicycles to be used by telegraph boys. So that was a nice bit of income for him. He made a name for himself by taking a bicycle and riding all the way to Bulawayo, and from Bulawayo to Gwelo, from Gwelo to Selukwi, and there he turned around and retraced his journey back to South Africa. 1,200 miles, trouble-free cycling, not one breakdown. And he attributed this to the excellent Dunlop tires that his machine was fitted with. It was quite an achievement when you think of it. I mean, no tar roads. He's in the middle of the wilderness. There are dangerous predators all around him, and yet he singly performed this amazing feat. Well, cycling was a craze in Johannesburg. The Wanderers Sports Club had a very, very big sort of social club there devoted to cycling. Arthur Shimwell also had a group of cyclists, and exactly 21 of them, a very exclusive group. They were known as the Goldfield's Dispatch Riders. And we don't know much about them. But you know, it was the outfit that if you had a message that had to be conveyed confidentially and quickly somewhere, these were the trusted guys that you would call upon. Shimwell had a lot of prominent associates as customers, people like Lionel Phillips and even Alfred Byte. You wouldn't think that he would be a cycling enthusiast, but he was, and other important people too. So here we are. It's the evening of the 31st of December 1895, just before midnight. Lionel Phillips sends a message to Arthur Shimwell, and he says, listen man, I need a rider urgently to take a message to Dr. Jameson. Can you help us? So a Boer dispatch rider from that elite group by the name of Cilliers is selected. And you might think, hey, this is very strange. How come there's a Boer in amongst all these these English oaks? But you see, nationality comes second, the bicycle comes first. That's what bound them all together. So Cilliers goes to his friend Maynard Rowland, and he says, Maynard, man, don't you want to come and ride along with me for company? I got an assignment tomorrow morning, but right now I've got to go to Goldfield's building and hear what it's about. Do you want to come along? So these two gentlemen rock up there at Goldfield's in the dead of night, and they are conveyed to Colonel Frank Rhodes's office. Now, Frank Rhodes is the brother of Cecil John Rhodes. And he says to them, gentlemen, thank you for offering to help. I'm going to write a message. Okay, when I've written it, I'm going to read it out to you. I want you to read it, and I want you to memorize it, because this message must be got through to Dr. Jameson. And if for some reason it falls into the enemy's hands and you manage to still get away and get to Dr. Jameson, I want you to be able to repeat it to him word for word. So they said, fine. So Frank writes out this message, and Lionel Phillips, in pencil, adds a few notes at the bottom, which I'm not going to talk about. It doesn't have any bearing on the story, really. So we'll confine ourselves to what Frank Rhodes recorded. Now, none of them at that time knew that they were making history. This is the first time ever that a bicycle would be used in warfare. Can you imagine it? But, well, never mind. So they take the note after they have done as Frank has said, and they go downstairs, they take the saddle off Roland's bicycle, roll the message up, stick it down the tube, and put the saddle back on again and clamp up the screw. And they go on off home. You know, Maynard was a strange fellow. He'd gone along for the ride. Cilliers was in charge. But as the story develops, we see that this fellow Rowlands he had qualities that, shall we say, Cilliers did not have. And Rowlands very quickly becomes the sort of leader of this team of cyclists that set out to find Jameson. But we'll talk more about that in a moment. Arthur Shimwell, prominent as he was at that time, and important a supporter of cycling, seems in later life to have taken a different turn. And I think it had a lot to do with the Anglo-Boer War that followed a few years later. He lost most of everything. He boarded up his shop, closed up business, gone off to serve with the British forces. came back to find that the shop had been plundered, very little left there. British government gave him something toward re-establishing his business. I don't know how successful that was. He left for some distant place. I think he settled down near the coast somewhere in Durban, and sort of vanished for years from, from the cycling world. And when he passed away, his death certificate had this strange remark on it. Arthur Shimwell, cause of death, chronic alcoholism and injuries received whilst alighting from a moving bus. They say you can know a lot about a person from the way they die. And there's something so sad about that to me when I think of how significant he was in Johannesburg and how well he was doing, and then this was his end. Oh well, at any rate, while these cyclists are going home, getting ready to have a couple of hours sleep before they leave at first light, back at the column, they are moving into a what we call a re-entrant. Now that is a sort of a ravine with sloping and high sides on either end, converging up ahead, in this case at a ridge. And bear in mind it's nighttime now, and the column during the day, and when visibility is okay at night, they move almost in an extended line, and not very deep, about 300 yards deep. But now, yeah, coming to this re-entrant, the road to Johannesburg, such as it is, narrows so much that it almost reduces you to walking in single file to get over that ridge that lies ahead. And so the column starts closing in on itself, and the scouts go ahead, just making sure everything is okay, and bam, they walk into an ambush. And there are an estimated 40 Boers up on the ridge, and they're pouring lead down into the re-entrant. Well, Inspector Straker from the Bechuanaland Border Police moves up the advance guard, and they engage the enemy. And so there's a contact. It doesn't last very long, but in the final few shots, one of our troopers is wounded, and the bush is silenced. So now they've got to clear the terrain ahead of them before they can move the column any further. Everything has now come to a stop. And it's difficult because it's broken terrain with a lot of scattered huge boulders everywhere, trees in between. It's nighttime. Nobody knows really what's facing them. So about sometime after 1 o'clock, between 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, they've now established that the Boers seemingly have gone from that immediate vicinity. But nobody is certain. You can't say this with any degree of confidence that we can now move on, everything's over. So the decision is made, look, let's hold our position now. We stopped, let's stop now. We'll wait until first light and we can see what's going on, and then we'll move ahead. And it was an unfortunate decision, because they lost a considerable amount of time, which the Boers put to good use. Had they kept on pushing, the story might have had a different ending altogether. But at any rate, come first light, they notice an African lady up on the one flank. She's moving between the boulders, and she's looking for spent cartridge cases, and she's collecting these. Nobody bothers her, nobody speaks to her. They just notice that this is happening. And so the column resumes its march over the ridge, down on the other side, and a few miles further on, they're out of the hilly country, out into the open, and they're moving to their next depot, which is a place called Van Oudtshoorns. And there they hope to be able to get food and forage for the horses, which they do. So they stop again once they are there. More time wasted, but it can't be helped. And while they're there, a solitary Boer on a horse waving a white flag comes riding up. Well, of course, he's just been in a contact. One of the guys have been wounded, and here comes a Boer with a white flag. What does he want to parley about, you know? What's going on? So they question him, but they can't make any sense out of anything they're saying. You know, he's clearly he's not a threat to them. He doesn't represent anybody. Nobody has sent him there to come and talk to them. And to all intents and purposes, he seems to be wandering aimlessly around the veld. So if he's going to be wandering around, he may as well stay with them, and they'll sort of let him go once they get to Joburg. So they tell him, listen, broer, you stick with us now, okay? Don't go riding off on your horse anymore. So he does that. So they've got him. Then, no sooner has that little incident been settled, when a group of riders come up. And it's two men. They are dispatch riders sent by Sir Jacobus de Wet. I love the way that rolls off the tongue. Sir Jacobus de Wet. He's the British agent in Pretoria. You know, how shall I put it? He's the liaison officer between the Transvaal Boer government and the imperial government. And he works through Sir Hercules Robinson in Cape Town, who's the High Commissioner. So he has gone and found two Boers who have agreed to take a message to Jameson. And they've got an escort with them, and they've got written passes allowing them to move through the Boer lines. So they've come with a message, and they're impatient, these blokes say. They don't want to answer questions, they don't want to talk, they haven't got time to waste. There's your message, thank you very much. Wait, hang on, there's a reply. So Jameson reads this, and it's a message from Sir Hercules. And it's the worst possible news, eh? I mean, Hercules, between you, me, and the gatepost, knew all about what was going on and what had been planned there. He knew that there would be an invasion of the Transvaal. The only thing is he didn't know about the timing, and this caught him on the wrong foot. So up to now he'd been sending messages, oh, you must turn around and go back, and you know, the British government has repudiated your actions, we don't like this kind of thing, you know, and you're going to be held responsible, blah, 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 which is what one would expect a High Commissioner to say. But now he's gone a step further. He's now declared them outlaws, and anybody that gives any help to Jameson or his men will be declared as accomplices and will also be punished. So, you know, Jameson looks at this, and now for the first time, he writes back to Robinson, and he reminds him of the plight of the people in Joburg. You know, I said from the beginning of this incident with the raid, that we understand Jameson best if we just realize that in his mind, he was convinced that the people were in danger there in Johannesburg, and he was going out there. And a lot of people say, it's hogwash. They wanted to take over the gold mines, they wanted to overthrow the government, they wanted to do 101 things, but the primary motivation for Jameson was the situation that the Johannesburg population found itself in. In other words, that they were under threat of immediate attack from the Boers, and he wanted to try and prevent that. So now he reminds Robinson of that. And it's almost, if you look between the lines, he doesn't quite say this, you know, but it's almost as though you know about this, you know, and you people have done nothing about it. And now that I'm doing something about it, you want you to declare me an outlaw. He doesn't go that far, and certainly later on. You know, he took the blame on his shoulders for the whole enterprise, but it was very unfair. Oh, please excuse me. I just had to have a sip there. So, and he goes on and he says, you know, I've meant no harm to anybody here. I've done no harm to anybody so far. I've told everybody that I've met, I don't mean any harm. He could have added there, you people, you know that the Boers are the first to have fired upon us. We didn't fire on anybody. But they've started whatever's going to happen now. So this message is sent back to Robinson, and he's told him, I can't turn around like you want me to. How can I turn around? There's no food behind me. There's no forage for the horses. The minute I turn my back, the Boers are going to attack me. I know that, man. So I've got to go forward to Johannesburg. And the two dispatch riders go on their way. All of this is another delay now. We are now at 9:30 in the morning. That column is virtually covered, just a couple of miles since midnight. And it's not good enough because they had worked it out at the start of this operation that they would have to ride, like hell for leather to get to Joburg in as short as possible time to prevent the Boers from amassing and stopping them. So they set off 9:30, and they haven't gone very far when a message comes from the rear guard. Listen, the Boers are starting to close up on us. We got 100 of them visual, and they it looks like they mean trouble. So Willoughby sends back another Maxim gun and some men to reinforce the rear guard, and they keep moving forward. And they've gone about two miles away from Van Oudtshoorn's when they discover fences on either side of them. Fences to the left, fences to the right, and you can't move the column through this lot unless once again you draw it in on itself and then single file down the road, which is not an option now. I mean, they've got a large force of Boers on their left flank, another lot over there on the right flank. Not as many, but a good many. And they've got the ones behind crowding ever closer. And up ahead, there's a large force of Boers who are falling back ahead of them. They're keeping their distance, but they're there. So now to reduce the column to a single file again is just asking for trouble. So they have to stop and cut these fences down to allow the passage of the wagons and the horses and the men and everything. Another delay that takes place there. And while they're busy with that, the two cyclists arrive, Rowlands and Cillier. It would have been better all round if they hadn't got through, honestly. They'd set out in the morning, you see, and cycling along merrily in a westerly direction, sort of like almost cross-graining, if you like, looking for Jameson or any sign of where the column might be so that they can head for it. And then they walk into a bunch of Boers. Hey, where you O's going, eh? So they said, no, we're just out for a ride. It's a lovely day and we just a bit of exercise. So, oh, well, that's good. We're glad to have met you. Can you guys do us a favor? If you're going in that direction, you'll find a Commandant Potgieter out ahead there somewhere. Can you give him a message from us? Yeah, sure. Okay, hang on a bit. We'll write it down. So this Boer writes down a message for his commandant and gives it to Rowland, and he bids them, a good trip, and off they go looking for this commandant. So they find him, and they give him the message, and he's delighted. He says, guys, I'm going to give you a pass to travel around here, so nobody should be hassling you. Just show them the pass if they stop you. But what are your plans now? So they said, well, it's getting on a bit in the morning, and we didn't have breakfast. We just set out at early light, so We understand somewhere here in the distance is a small hotel. So we're going to try and find that, and we're going to get something to eat, and then we'll probably turn around and go back to Joburg. So he said, okay, that's fine. Lekker. Good luck. Travel safe. So they travel along, they come to a mine, they see a whole lot of Africans busy digging trenches and that. They ask a few questions. Oh, what's happening? No, we're making fortifications here so that when Jameson comes this way, you know, the Boers will stand in these trenches and shoot at them. Oh, really, really? Okay. So they're picking up information as they go along. In the meantime, after being given that letter to give to Potgieter, as soon as they were out of sight of everybody, well, they stopped their bicycles, opened the letter and read that and memorized that as well. So they were really doing the work of spies, I suppose, eh? And a serious penalty if the Boers stumbled onto them. So they're quite brave in their own way. Anyway, eventually they get to Jameson, and Cilliers says later, you know, we were greeted very warmly, shook my hand, asked me about everything that was going on in Joburg and so on. And, you know, we took the seat off the bicycle and gave him the message. Now, this is where all the trouble starts, you see. It wasn't just the message. It was also what these two riders conveyed to the column. And I'm afraid Roland, as I said before, seems to have taken the lead in this. Cilliers comes across as a rather quiet, meditative sort of a man, you know, not given to much talk. But not Roland. Roland, the information is just coming off his tongue. And he's saying things really that he shouldn't be saying. And he's like inventing a situation. Told them quite truthfully of all the things that they'd seen along the way. And of course, Jameson and Willoughby are very interested from the security perspective as to what is lying ahead of them. And then Roland starts talking about numbers. And he says, yeah, we got men over there in Joburg that are going to come out and help you, you know. He said, I myself, when I get back, I can easily get 2,000 men together, mounted men with rifles, right out to you straight away. No hassle. And Jameson says, well, you know, I'm sure I don't need them, but 2,000 men would be welcome because the Boers would just draw off immediately. So he says, yeah, but at any rate, there are 200 there. And they're going to be riding out to Krugersdorp to, you know, to support you. Krugersdorp. Now, it was not Willoughby's intention to directly go to Krugersdorp. He wanted to go to Joburg. That was the whole plan here. But now these men would be going to Krugersdorp and they would have to be found there. But 200 men is nothing to sneeze at, eh? Because Jameson's force is only about 500. Now, another 200 is going to make a nice difference, eh? Looking at the size of the Boers that are riding around them, keeping out of rifle shot. So that's good news. And then Roland goes and he sort of circulates amongst the men over there, and the officers hear the men cheering, and so he's talking to them too. Nah, there's, you know, it's a piece of cake. There's nothing for you to worry about and all of this. You know, your ride will soon be over. Maybe tonight you'll be in Joburg. You know, that kind of thing. So this seems very much to have been the situation. Anyway, Jameson dictates a reply which Colonel Harry White writes down. And this is given to Rollins, who then puts it in his bicycle frame, puts the saddle back on. They're going to go back now. But they have left everybody with a very distinct impression that there's help on the way, and it's going to be meeting them at Krugersdorp. So what did the message say that Frank Rhodes sent? Did Frank say that or not? Well, here's the thing. Those messages Jameson kept in his pocket. And when he saw later, that would be the next day, that defeat was inevitable and that they'd have to surrender, he tore that message up. And the scattered bits lay on the veldt for 4 months, in the rain, in the heat of the day, at night, with the wind blowing. The Boers have got the luck, eh? There's no other way you can look at it. 4 months later, some Boer wandering around the veldt finds bits of paper. With some friends of his, they gather up as many bits of paper as they can find, and they reconstruct this message like a jigsaw puzzle. But of course there's gaps everywhere, and you can't make full sense out of it. So later on, the authorities call in an expert, a man, shall I say, who's got forensic knowledge of documents, and they ask him, can you please try and reconstruct this message in the way that you think it was originally composed? And so he does so. He does his best, and what he feels the message says is, "Dear Doctor, the rumor of massacre at Johannesburg that started you to our relief was not true. We are all right. Feeling intense, we have armed quite a lot of men. I shall be very glad to see you. We are not in possession of the town. Would you like me to send you some men to show you the camp? You're a fine fellow. Here's wishing you good luck. We will all drink along with you. Yours ever, Frank Rhodes." There's no mention there of armed men being sent out to give Jameson support. Nothing like that. And yet these two cyclists have now gone away. They're on their way back to Johannesburg, and they've left a distinct impression behind that there are hundreds of men coming to their assistance, and that they would be waiting there for them at Krugersdorp. Now, Willoughby's not very happy about this. He's got no intention of going to Krugersdorp. He wants to make for Johannesburg because that was the plan, and he wants to stick to it. Jameson sees things a bit differently. He realizes the force is only 500 men strong. Another 200 men would make a big difference. And not only that, if there were 200 men sent out to Krugersdorp, and he and the column don't meet them, those 200 men would in all likelihood, be massacred by the Boers. So he feels obligated to go there. And he overrules Willoughby, and he says, "Sorry, Colonel, we gotta just make for Krugersdorp and meet our friends there." Now, one of the interesting things about that message that Frank Rhodes sent is it starts right at the beginning with the words, "The rumor of massacre that started you to our relief." And, you know, I see that as confirmation again. I mean, even the people there in Johannesburg understood what I said earlier on, is that Jameson was motivated by the plight of the people in Johannesburg. That was on his mind, and here's an acknowledgement of it from Frank Rhodes himself. He says, "I just want to reassure you, Doctor, that that's not true. We're okay. You know, we're not in possession of the town, but we're okay. We're feeling tense, but we're all right." So the cyclists are on their way back now to Johannesburg, and they bump into a Boer patrol. "Oh, where you guys going?" "Oh, we're going to Johannesburg." "Where you come from?" No, we've just been riding around. We've got a pass here from Commandant Potgieter. I'm not interested in your past. I asked you where you came from. No, we're just riding around. You think you better hang around with us a bit. Come, on your bikes. Let's go. Follow us. Don't try anything funny. Get a bullet. Oh dear. So, Cilliers and Rowlands are escorted to a nearby mine, and there is a hotel there on the hill, and they are told, right, sit down, behave yourself while we figure out what to do with you. The men are searched there. They find nothing incriminating on them, but they're not free to go. They sit there the whole afternoon, and when it starts getting late in the day, the Boers decide, okay, we're going to move. And you're coming with us. So, come, let's go. And Rowlands has been thinking, how am I going to get away from that message in the bicycle? You know, that if they find that, you know, it's the firing squad. So he says, I'm tired. I don't care if you're tired. Get on your bikes, the two of you. Come on, we're going. So they set off in the direction of Johannesburg. They come to a hill, and he's moaning and he's complaining, and the Boers are getting frustrated with him. And they're nearly at the top of the hill when he pretends that the bike's gone out of control. You know, it sort of goes over a bump and then slews to one side and then turns around and then goes, you know, bolting down the hill with his feet off the pedals. And he's calling out to Cilliers to help him, and the thing's out of control, and the Boers are shouting at him, stop and come back up here again, you know, we'll shoot you. But on the way down, he leaves the track because there's like a little bit of a gully there, and he goes crashing into this, and I think his bike gets damaged at that point. So Cilliers is coming after him with words of encouragement. Hang on, I'll come give you a hand now. And the Boers are raising their voices as well and giving chorus. Get back up here, or you guys are going to get shot. So they're out of sight, and they're in this gully, and the Boers are calling to them, and the two cyclists are busy letting their air out of their tires. Now the Boers come riding down the hill, and they're not happy. There's weapons pointing at the two cyclists, and they're told to get back onto the track. They push their bicycles there. They say the bikes got damaged when we went off the track. So it's touch and go. Any more nonsense from you guys now, you know, we'll know we'll solve our problem as to what we should do with you. So start walking. Come on. The bicycle is put on one side, and nobody bothers with it because it's damaged. And then months later, the mechanic is told to fix it. And he takes it to pieces, and what does he find? The message inside that Jameson dictated to Harry White. And clearly, in the message, Jameson says, we'll be very happy to have 200 men meet us. And but it was too late. By that time, the battle was over, and you know, what happened happened. So in the meantime, the column moves forward. They're heading for a place called Hind's Store. It's their last depot, and everybody's looking forward to it. They haven't eaten since the morning. They haven't had a decent rest, and now they think they're going to get both food and a time to relax. No chance. When they get to Hind's Store, they find that the place has been ransacked. There is nothing left there, not for the horses, not for the men. And what's been worse is that 2 miles from that store, It's been another session of cutting fences, cutting fences, cutting fences. The terrain seems to be crisscrossed with fences, so it's another delay. And the Boers are not falling back as quickly as they should before them. In fact, as the advance guard comes over a rise, they see that there's 200 Boers in a fly beneath them, watering their horses, just standing in a stream, very nonchalantly, completely indifferent to the fact that there's a armed column marching in their direction. Well, when Harry White saw this, he quickly had the guns brought up, and the Boers mounted and got out of there as fast as they could. But he sent a couple of shells in their direction just to remind them, we're not playing games, you guys. You can't get this close to us. Keep your distance, you've got to allow more space between us. But it wasn't with the intention of hurting or killing anybody. If he had wanted to do that, he would have turned his Maxims on them, and it had been men and horses dead over there in that stream. So they proceed. And they come up a rise, and they stand at the top of it, and they look down. The ground falls away from them to another little river. There's a drift over it, and then the ground rises to a high ridge, and on the top of it, a battery shed, which belongs to the Queen's Mine. That's the name of that mine. And there are earthworks there, prospecting trenches that have been dug a long time ago, and boulders as well on the ridge. It is a natural, perfectly defense system, and the Boers are there in their hundreds. Beyond them, they can see the buildings and the outline of Johannesburg. That's how close they are. Joburg is within sight, but in front of them is this formidable obstacle. And Willoughby doesn't like it, and nor does Jameson. And the two of them stand there, and they think, how are we going to ever get through this? There's a big punch-up waiting for us this afternoon. I think we'll stop there, okay? We can carry on next time. Folks, let me just say thank you again for your patience and your support. Thank you especially to our patrons, guys. I'm not going to talk a lot about this kind of thing, but I really appreciate what you're doing. It's not taken for granted. I thank you for your help. I really mean that. So please don't forget to check Josie's little clip that I've added on at the end of the movie. And in the meantime, you all keep well and take care, and God bless you, eh? In the 1800s, in a sleepy little town called Richmond in South Africa, a darling baby girl was born to a Mr. and Mrs. Brink. And they named the child Josephine Cornelia. And I'm sure they thought that this was the cutest, prettiest, smartest little baby ever. And as the years went by, this child was introduced to Lady Robinson, the wife of Sir Hercules Robinson, the British High Commissioner of the Cape Colony. It was decided that Josie should go to England and complete her education there. And so this was duly arranged, and she finished schooling there in England. Whereupon she entered the social life at London. always known that beauty was a commodity that can be used, and she intended to use her beauty to fulfill all her ambitions. She was in time presented at the court of Queen Victoria, and it seems that soon after that, this intelligent woman lost all her common sense because she became the mistress of Edward VII. Now you might think on the surface, well, that's not a bad achievement. After all, he put her up in a house, paid for it, paid for the servants, made sure she had nice clothes, nice food. What more could one want? But it wasn't enough. There was something missing. Josie wasn't entirely satisfied with that. She wanted more, but of course, Edward was not in a position to give her more, not what she wanted. So she left him. But it was okay, because she had then met a man by the name of Ernest Beckett, who seemed to have a finger in every pie. He was a banker, he was an art collector, he was a this, he was a that. But whatever he did, he seemed to have amassed a fortune to himself. And he took her in. So Josie now became his mistress. And it was very much a repeat of what she'd had earlier, except this time she didn't seem to mind it. You see, she was in love with this cad. That's the only way to describe him, and that's not my description. That's one historian called him that, and another historian called him a pure rotter. So history has not been kind to this man. He has an awful reputation. So yeah, she was in love with this man, and she was hoping, almost against hope, that they would get married. And this discussion did take place between them. It came up. But Ernest was full of stories. It was the wrong time, and but she hung on, as I said, in the hope that one day he would relent and she would become Mrs. Beckett. She then met a man by the name of Herbert Tree. You might say to yourself, that's a very strange name, and indeed it is. But it's not his real name, it's his stage name. He was an actor. But he was more than that. He was also a theatre owner. He owned the Haymarket Theatre. And he prevailed upon Josie to take up an acting career, which she did. And at the same time, there was a sculptor by the name of Waldo Story, and he used Josie's likeness to serve as a model for him to carve a beautiful angel. And he named it the Angel of Victory. So here was Josie now. Okay, she was an actress, she was now a model for artists, and she was still with this guy, Ernest Beckett, who was still as immovable as ever on the subject of marriage. Josie was up against stiff competition, though. You see, Beckett had another mistress, a lady by the name of Alice Keppel, who, like Josie, happened to be the ex-mistress of Edward VII, the great-great-grandson of Edward VII is none other than His Majesty King Charles, and the great-great-granddaughter of Alice Keppel is Her Majesty Queen Camilla. So here is Josie, and she's still struggling with Beckett. She's getting nowhere with him. And at that moment in time, she happens to meet a man from Johannesburg who's also a banker. His name is John Dale Lace, a dashing fellow who is smitten by her beauty, overwhelmed by her charm, and can't imagine living his life without her. And so he speaks very seriously to her about marriage, and eventually she accepts, because I think she feels that she's getting nowhere with Ernest Beckett. As I understand it, John goes back to South Africa. He's not just a banker, he has other interests as well there. He's involved in dealing in gold and in diamonds, and he's in his own right becoming a very interesting person, and making a lot of money for himself in the process. So he's no sooner gone off to South Africa when Josie goes back to Beckett, and of course he's delighted, but he's still full of lies and full of nonsense. But she's still hanging on to the hope that maybe I was too quick in getting married. Maybe there's still a chance for me with Beckett. So eventually she contacts John in South Africa. Well, of course, this comes as a shock to him, and eventually he agrees. I mean, what can he do? So they divorce, and nothing happens with Beckett. Absolutely nothing. He's not going to move. So after a while, I hope with some remorse, Josie contacts John in South Africa, and she says, look, I'm very sorry about us being divorced. Now, do you think there's a possibility that we could make a go of it again? He's still available. He's unattached, and he almost can't believe his luck. So he takes Josie and gets married to her. By this time, this messy life of hers has ended up in her having a son from Ernest Beckett called Lancelot. And John is very happy to take the son as his own. So they go as a family back to Joburg, and they move into a beautiful mansion. And Josie employs a whole host of servants to wait upon her. She takes over as the social queen of Johannesburg. They've got money to burn. She only baths in milk. She only sleeps between black satin sheets. She's driven around Johannesburg in a carriage drawn by 4 zebras. Once a year, she hosts a garden party where all the wealthy are invited to come along and to make contributions to the needy. Because you see, despite all her flaws, she was a lady with a generous heart, and she was quite willing to put some effort into helping those that were less fortunate than herself. And so time passed. But the good times don't always last, eh? That beautiful house that they had, fire destroyed most of it. It was rebuilt many years later, but at the time they had to move out because John's fortunes had changed. He was losing money hand over fist. Things became tighter and tighter, and life was not easy. Josie survived a incident at sea when the SS Galway struck the Orient Bank at East London. She was rescued from the ship 5 days later. So all in all, I think looking over this lady's life, and of course we've only just touched on the highlights, she had a very, very interesting time. She said before she died, "When I'm gone, cremate me at night, take my ashes and cast them to the wind." might be asking yourself, well, but what has this got to do with Rhodesia? Where does she fit into everything that I've been talking about up to now? Well, when she was still single, she met this young man in England, and he fell head over heels in love with her. And he just wanted to carry her off to South Africa. She said, man, it was like that. If I'd said yes, I would have been Mrs. Rhodes. But unfortunately, her heart was elsewhere. And he came home, no doubt with a broken heart. But what do you think would have happened if she had said yes? I wonder. You know, her husband was approached once, and he was asked, John, you've been married twice to this woman. What's it like living with her? And he said, living with her is sheer hell. He said, but living without her is worse than hell. Rhodes tamed a wild country in Central Africa, but I wonder if he would have been able to tame this lady. What do you think?